The orc woman collapsed on the dirt road just as the morning sun broke through the mist, her shoulder bleeding through her leather vest, and Isaac Quinn dropped his basket of turnips to run toward her before he could think better of it. She was massive up close, easily 6.5 feet tall with muscles that strained against her travel-worn clothing, skin the color of summer moss, and small tusks that jutted up from her lower jaw. Her breathing came in ragged gasps, and when her amber eyes snapped open at his approach, they held more fear than threat. Isaac raised his hands slowly, the way he would approaching a wounded animal in the woods. "Easy now," he said quietly. "I am not going to hurt you." The orc woman tried to push herself up, but her injured arm buckled beneath her weight. Fresh blood oozed from what looked like a deep gash across her shoulder, and Isaac could see the edges of torn flesh where something had cut her badly. She said something in a language he did not understand, her voice rough with pain and exhaustion. "I have supplies at my farm," Isaac said, pointing down the road to where his small homestead sat at the edge of the forest. "It is not far. Let me help you." The orc woman's eyes darted past him to the village in the distance, then back to his face. She seemed to be calculating whether he was a threat, whether the risk of accepting help from a human was worth the alternative of bleeding out on this road. Finally, she gave a single, sharp nod. Isaac carefully slipped his arm around her waist, taking most of her weight onto his shoulders. She was heavier than he expected, solid muscle and bone, but he had spent years working his fields and hauling harvest loads. Together they stumbled down the road toward his farm, the orc woman's breathing growing more labored with each step. By the time they reached his small wooden house, her skin had taken on a grayish tinge beneath the green, and she was barely conscious. Isaac kicked open his door and helped her inside, guiding her toward the sturdy kitchen table. She collapsed onto the bench beside it, her good arm gripping the table edge so hard the wood creaked. "I need to see the wound," Isaac said, moving to light his oil lamp. The morning sun barely penetrated the small windows, and he would need good light for this. "Can you remove your vest?" The orc woman looked at him with those fierce amber eyes, then slowly began unlacing her leather vest with her good hand. The movement clearly cost her, but she managed to shrug the garment off one shoulder, exposing the gash that ran from her collarbone down across her shoulder blade. Isaac sucked in a breath. The wound was worse than he had thought, deep and ragged, definitely needing stitches. "I am going to get water and clean cloth," he said, speaking slowly and clearly even though he was not sure how much she understood. "Then I need to clean this and stitch it closed. It is going to hurt." The orc woman said something in her language that sounded like grudging acceptance. Isaac hurried to his well, drawing fresh water and grabbing the cleanest linens he owned. He also retrieved his sewing kit, the one with the curved needles and strong thread he used for mending leather harnesses. It would have to do. When he returned, the orc woman had slumped forward onto the table, her breathing shallow. Isaac worked quickly, heating water over his fire and preparing clean cloths. He poured a measure of the strong spirits he kept for winter illnesses into a cup and pressed it into her good hand. "Drink," he said. "It will help with the pain." She lifted the cup to her lips and downed the contents in one swallow without flinching. Then she set the cup down and met his eyes, giving him another curt nod. Isaac began cleaning the wound, carefully wiping away dried blood and dirt. The orc woman's muscles tensed beneath his hands, but she made no sound. Up close, he could see old scars crisscrossing her arms and back, the marks of someone who had seen combat. Her skin was warm under his fingers, rougher than human skin but not unpleasant. "What happened to you?" he asked softly as he worked. "Who did this?" The orc woman was quiet for a long moment. Then in halting, heavily accented English, she said, "Raiders, humans. They attacked my trading caravan 3 days past." Isaac's hand stilled. "I am sorry." "Why?" Her voice was sharp despite her weakness. "You are human." "Not all humans are raiders," Isaac said, resuming his work. "Just like I imagine not all orcs are what the village elders claim they are." She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a grunt of pain. "Village healer. I go there first before collapse. She see me coming." She spit at my feet and slammed door. Anger flared hot in Isaac's chest. Margaret Orson, the town healer, was known for her rigid views on what she called the orc menace. Isaac had heard her speeches in the village square, full of fear and hatred. The fact that she would turn away an injured person, any injured person, made his jaw clench. "She is a fool," Isaac said flatly, "and not worthy of the title healer if she turns away those who need help." The orc woman turned her head slightly to look at him, surprise evident in her expression. Before she could respond, Isaac picked up his needle and thread. "This is going to be the hard part," he warned. "I have stitched up livestock and mended my own hand once after a scythe accident, but I am not a surgeon. I will do my best to be gentle." "Do what you must," she said, and her voice held a note of respect that had not been there before. Isaac threaded his needle with steady hands, then began the delicate work of closing the wound. The first pierce of the needle made the orc woman stiffen, her good hand gripping the table edge hard enough that he heard the wood crack. But she did not cry out, did not pull away. She simply endured, her breathing controlled and deliberate. He worked as quickly as he could while still being careful, making small, neat stitches the way his mother had taught him when he was a boy learning to mend clothes. The curved needle made it easier to work with the thick skin, and he was grateful for the strong thread that did not break under the tension. "My name is Isaac," he said as he worked, partly to distract her and partly because it seemed important that she know. "Isaac Quinn. I farm the land here, mostly vegetables and some grain, nothing exciting." "Zara," she said after a moment. "Zara of the Ironwood clan was of the Ironwood clan," she corrected bitterly. "They cast me out 4 moons ago." Isaac glanced up at her face. "Why?" "I refuse to raid human settlements." Said there must be better way, that war brings only death to both sides. Her voice was heavy with old pain. "My clan chief say I am weak. Orc loves humans more than her own people. So I leave before they could challenge me to blood combat." "That sounds like strength to me, not weakness," Isaac said, tying off another stitch. "It takes courage to stand alone for what you believe." Zara was silent for a while, watching him work with an unreadable expression. Finally, she said, "Why do you help me?" "You know what your village will say if they learn human man helps orc woman." Isaac paused in his work, considering the question seriously. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "Because you are hurt and alone and I have hands that can help. I spent 5 years as a soldier before I came here to farm. I saw enough bloodshed to last me several lifetimes. I am done with violence and hatred. If I can do one small thing to counter all that death, then I will do it." "You fight in war?" Zara asked, and there was new interest in her voice. "The border conflicts up north. I was young and stupid and thought glory waited on the battlefield." Isaac shook his head. "I learned different. There is no glory in watching your friends die in the mud. When my service ended, I took my pay and came out here to the frontier. I wanted land of my own and peace and quiet. I have been here 3 years now. You have family?" "Not anymore. My parents died of fever when I was 16. No siblings, no wife." He glanced up with a slight smile. "Just me and the chickens and the turnips." Zara made that sound again that might have been a laugh. "Lonely life." "Sometimes," Isaac admitted. "But honest, I know what to expect from chickens." He finished the last stitch and tied it off carefully, then cleaned the wound once more with water and spirits. The stitches were neat and even, and he felt a small surge of pride at his work. It would scar, but the wound should heal cleanly if infection did not set in. "There," he said, sitting back. "Done. I am going to bandage it now, and then you need to rest. You have lost a lot of blood." Zara looked down at her shoulder, examining his work with a critical eye. "You do well for farmer who is not surgeon. I have seen worse stitching from battlefield healers." "I will take that as high praise," Isaac said dryly, carefully wrapping clean linen around her shoulder and upper arm. "Now, do you think you can walk to the other room? I have a bed there, small but sturdy. You should sleep." "I should leave," Zara said, but her body contradicted her words, swaying slightly even as she sat. "Cannot put you in danger if village learns you harbor orc." "The village is not going to learn anything," Isaac said firmly. "My farm is isolated enough that I rarely get visitors, and even if someone does come by, you will be resting and recovering, not harboring. There is a difference." He could see her struggling with pride and practicality. Pride wanted her to refuse to stand on her own, to not be indebted to a human. But practicality knew that she was weak from blood loss and would likely collapse again if she tried to leave now. Practicality won. "One night," she said. "Then I go. We will see," Isaac said, offering his arm again. "Come on. Let us get you horizontal before you fall over." He helped her to his small bedroom, where a simple rope bed covered with quilts waited. Zara lowered herself onto it with a groan that she could not quite suppress, and Isaac could see the exhaustion washing over her now that the immediate crisis had passed. He pulled a quilt up over her, tucking it around her broad shoulders. "Rest," he said quietly. "I will be in the other room if you need anything. There is a chamber pot under the bed, water in the pitcher on the table. Try not to move that shoulder too much." Zara's eyes were already closing, but she murmured something in her own language that sounded like thanks. Isaac left the door cracked open and returned to his kitchen, where he finally noticed the blood staining his table and floor. He spent the next hour cleaning everything, boiling the rags and scrubbing the wood, until no trace of this morning's emergency remained. Outside, the day continued as normal. He could hear his chickens clucking in their coop, demanding to be fed. His garden needed weeding. There were a dozen chores waiting for his attention. But Isaac found himself sitting at his clean table instead, staring at nothing, thinking about the orc woman sleeping in his bed. This was dangerous, he knew. Not just because of what the village might say or do, but because harboring an orc could bring trouble from multiple directions. If her clan decided they wanted her back, they might come looking. If human raiders learned she was here, they might attack. And if the village elders found out, they would likely try to drive her away or worse. But when Isaac thought about turning her out, about sending her back onto the road injured and alone, his stomach churned with disgust. He had not been lying when he said he was done with violence and death. The soldier he had been would have followed orders, would have seen an orc as an enemy regardless of circumstances. The man he was now, the farmer he had worked hard to become, saw only another person who needed help. He stood and went to check on his patient. Zara was deeply asleep, her breathing slow and regular. In sleep, her face had lost some of its hardness, and Isaac could see that she was younger than he had first thought, probably close to his own age of 25. Her dark hair was braided back in practical fashion, and her hands, even relaxed, showed calluses from weapon work. Isaac returned to the kitchen and began preparing a simple stew with vegetables from his garden and dried meat from his stores. Zara would need food when she woke, something nourishing to help her body recover. He worked methodically, chopping and stirring, falling into the familiar rhythm of cooking. The sun was beginning to set when he heard movement from the bedroom. He ladled stew into a bowl and was carrying it toward the room when Zara appeared in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame. She had put her vest back on, though she wore it loose over the bandaged shoulder. "You should be resting," Isaac said, setting the bowl on the table and pulling out the bench for her. "I smell food," Zara said, moving carefully to sit. "And I have been sleeping all day. Feel like I waste your time." "Recovery is not a waste of time," Isaac said, placing the bowl in front of her along with a spoon. "How does your shoulder feel?" "It hurts," Zara said bluntly, picking up the spoon with her good hand. "But it's tolerable. You do good work." She tried a spoonful of the stew and her eyebrows rose. "This is good. You are good cook." "One of the benefits of living alone," Isaac said, sitting across from her with his own bowl. "Either learn to cook or eat badly every day." They ate in companionable silence for a while. Isaac found himself studying her when he thought she was not looking, noting the way she held herself even while injured, the pride in her posture, the careful control in her movements. She was beautiful in a way he had not expected, strong and fierce and entirely foreign to anything he had known. "The healer who refused you," Isaac said after a while. "Margaret Orson. She has hated orcs for as long as I have lived here. Her brother was killed in the border conflicts, I heard, and she blames all orcs for his death." "And yet you fight in those same conflicts and do not hate," Zara observed. "I saw orcs and humans both die," Isaac said quietly. "I saw good people on both sides doing terrible things because they were ordered to or because they were afraid. War makes monsters of everyone eventually. It taught me that the enemy is not the other side but the fighting itself." Zara set down her spoon and looked at him directly. "You are strange human, Isaac Quinn." "I will take that as a compliment." "It is," she said seriously. "In my clan, before I was cast out, I was warrior, one of best. I could fight, could kill, could lead raids that brought honor and goods to my people. But I see same thing you see. I watch human villages burn, watch children run crying from homes, watch old ones killed because they too slow to flee. And I think, what honor is this? What glory? We take their food because we say they took our land. They kill us because they say we are monsters. Both sides say they are right. Both sides add more bodies to the pile." "What changed for you?" Isaac asked. Zara was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the worn wood of the table. "My sister. She was younger, barely of age. She begged to join raid to prove herself as warrior. I try to stop her, but chief allow it. We attack settlements, small one like your village. My sister. She go into house and find human woman inside, holding baby. Human woman cry and beg, try to protect child." Zara's voice had gone very soft, and Isaac could see the pain in her eyes. "My sister, she raise her axe. And I watch this girl I help raise, this sister I love, about to kill woman and baby because that is what warriors do. So I step between them. I tell sister no, we leave them. Sister say I am weak, that I disobey orders. I say orders are wrong. We fight, her and me, in front of everyone. I win, but I let her live. I spare the human woman and child too. Chief see this and he say I am no longer true orc, that I have human sickness in my heart." "What happened to your sister?" Isaac asked gently. "She live. Last I hear, she is now clan champion, leader of warriors. She is everything I should have been if I not choose different path." Zara's hand curled into a fist on the table. "I not regret my choice, but it hurt, to lose family, to lose place in world." Isaac reached across the table and carefully placed his hand over her fist. Zara tensed at the contact, her eyes snapping to his face. But Isaac just held her gaze steadily. "You are not alone," he said, "for whatever that is worth." Zara stared at him for a long moment, and something complicated passed through her expression. Then, slowly, she turned her hand over so that her palm pressed against his. Her hand was larger than his, rougher, warmer. But it was a hand that had chosen mercy when cruelty was expected, and that meant more than any difference in appearance. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for stitching my wound when healer turned me away, for giving me shelter and food, for treating me like person instead of monster." "You are a person," Isaac said simply. "That is what the world seems to forget. We are all just people trying to survive and find meaning in the chaos." They sat like that for a while, hands joined across the table, until Zara finally pulled back and returned to her stew. Isaac let her eat in peace, cleaning up his own bowl and moving around the kitchen. But he felt the shift in the air between them, the first fragile thread of connection being woven. That night, Isaac insisted Zara keep the bed while he made a pallet on the floor in the main room. She protested, but he remained firm. "You are injured and need proper rest," he said. "I have slept on worse than a floor with blankets. Do not argue." Zara looked like she wanted to argue anyway, but finally she just shook her head and returned to the bedroom. Isaac lay down on his makeshift bed and stared at the ceiling beams, wondering what he had gotten himself into, and finding that he did not really mind the complication. The next morning, Isaac woke before dawn, as was his habit. He fed the chickens, collected eggs, and spent several hours working in his garden. The work was meditative, his hands in the soil, the sun warm on his back. He was pulling weeds from between his potato plants when he heard the door of his house open. Zara emerged, still moving carefully but with more strength than yesterday. She had managed to braid her hair back more neatly, and she wore her vest properly now, though he could see the bulk of the bandage beneath it. "You should not be up yet," Isaac called, sitting back on his heels. "I am not invalid," Zara called back. "I see chickens need water trough cleaned. I can do this." Before Isaac could protest, she was already heading toward the chicken coop. He watched, bemused, as this warrior orc woman who had been bleeding out on the road less than 2 days ago began mucking out his chicken area with competent efficiency. "You know chickens?" he asked, walking over. "My clan, we keep many animals. Chickens, goats, few cattle. I work with them since I was child." She glanced at him. "You think orcs only know fighting?" "I think I am learning that I know very little about orcs at all," Isaac admitted. "Most of what I was taught was probably wrong." "Same for me about humans," Zara said, dumping dirty water and refilling the trough from the well. "We told humans are weak, cowardly, treacherous, that they lie and cheat and will betray you first chance, but you prove this wrong." "I am just one person," Isaac said. "Yes," Zara agreed. "But one person is how change begins. One person choose different, and maybe others see and choose different too." They worked together through the morning, falling into an easy rhythm. Zara could not do heavy lifting with her injured shoulder, but she could still manage many tasks, and Isaac found himself appreciating the company. It had been a long time since he had someone to work alongside, to share the burden of daily chores. Around midday they heard the sound of a horse approaching on the road. Isaac tensed immediately, his hand going to Zara's arm. "Inside," he said urgently. "Quickly." Zara did not argue, moving swiftly back into the house. Isaac waited, trying to look casual as a rider came into view. It was Thomas from the village, a young man who sometimes bought vegetables from Isaac's farm. "Morning, Isaac," Thomas called, reining in his horse. "I am heading to the northern homesteads to deliver some tools from the blacksmith. Thought I would stop and see if you needed anything from town." "No, I am fine," Isaac said, stepping forward to put himself between Thomas and the house. "Thank you, though. How are things in the village?" "Tense," Thomas said, lowering his voice. There was an orc spotted on the road a few days back. Margaret, the healer, she saw it coming toward the village and raised the alarm. By the time anyone could organize, the creature was gone, but people are worried there might be more around. Isaac kept his expression carefully neutral. Did anyone get hurt? No, but Margaret said the orc looked injured, probably from a fight with traders or something. She has been going around warning everyone to be on guard. Thomas shook his head. My pa says we should organize patrols, make sure these monsters know they are not welcome here. Every word made Isaac's jaw clench tighter, but he forced himself to nod calmly. Well, I have not seen anything out here. If I do, I will send word. Good man. Thomas tipped his hat. Take care, Isaac, and keep your door barred at night. Cannot be too careful with orcs about. Isaac watched Thomas ride away, waiting until the sound of hoofbeats faded entirely before returning to the house. He found Zara standing just inside the door, her face carefully blank but her good hand gripping the edge of the table. They call me creature, she said quietly. Monster. They want patrols to drive me away from land that was my people's first, before humans came and claimed it. I know, Isaac said, and he was surprised by the anger in his own voice. I am sorry. The ignorance and fear, it makes me sick. Is not your fault, Zara said. This is the way of the world. Orcs hate humans, humans hate orcs, and people like you and me caught in the middle. Isaac crossed to where she stood and carefully took her hands in his. Then maybe we make our own world, right here, one where it does not matter what you are, only who you are. Zara looked up at him, and her amber eyes were bright with something that might have been tears, though she would not let them fall. You are idealist, Isaac Quinn. Maybe, he agreed, but I would rather be an idealist trying to do good than a realist accepting that hatred is inevitable. They stood close together in the quiet of the house, and Isaac became acutely aware of how near she was, how her presence seemed to fill the space around them. She smelled like leather and earth and something else, something wild and clean that made his heart beat faster. He released her hands and stepped back, suddenly feeling like he had crossed some invisible line. We should have lunch, he said, his voice rougher than intended. Then I need to check your stitches, make sure everything is healing properly. If Zara noticed his awkwardness, she did not comment on it. They ate bread and cheese and early apples from Isaac's small orchard. Afterward, Isaac carefully unwrapped the bandage on Zara's shoulder and examined his work. The stitches were holding well, and there was no sign of infection. Her skin around the wound was warm but not feverish, and the edges were already beginning to close. You heal fast, Isaac observed, gently probing the area around the stitches. Does it hurt? Some, Zara admitted, but less than yesterday. Orcs heal faster than humans usually. Unless wound is very bad or gets infected. That is good news, Isaac said, applying a fresh bandage. I think the stitches can come out in another week or so if this keeps up. I should leave before then, Zara said, though she did not sound convinced. Is not safe for you if I stay. Where would you go? Isaac asked, sitting back. You said yourself you have no clan, and the roads are dangerous for an orc traveling alone. At least here you have shelter and food and someone to help if the wound gives you trouble. You want me to stay? Zara asked, and there was vulnerability in the question that caught Isaac off guard. Yes, he said honestly. I know it is complicated and probably foolish, but yes, I want you to stay at least until you are fully healed, longer if you want. Zara studied his face for a long moment as if trying to determine whether he was serious. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her because she nodded slowly. I stay, she said, but I work, I earn my keep. I am not charity case. Agreed, Isaac said. Though you need to let that shoulder heal properly before you start hauling heavy loads. I am not invalid, Zara repeated, but there was affection in her tone now. I can still work, and work she did. Over the following days, Zara proved herself invaluable around the farm. She had a natural affinity for animals, and the chickens seemed to adore her despite her size. She could mend fences one-handed, pull weeds, harvest vegetables, and even helped Isaac repair a section of his barn roof that had been leaking. They developed routines together. Isaac would rise first and start breakfast while Zara fed the animals. They would work through the morning, sharing tasks and conversation. Lunch was simple, eaten in the shade of Isaac's house. Afternoons were for more work, and evenings they would sit together and talk, sharing stories about their vastly different lives. Isaac learned that Zara loved music, but could not sing well, that she had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard, that she was wickedly intelligent and could calculate crop yields and optimal planting patterns in her head faster than Isaac could with paper. Zara learned that Isaac had wanted to be a scholar before the war, that he still read whenever he could find books, that he was terrible at fishing but kept trying anyway because he found it peaceful. They also learned each other's bodies in innocent ways. Isaac changed Zara's bandages every day, his fingers growing familiar with the landscape of her shoulder, the texture of her skin, the way she tensed when something hurt. Zara helped Isaac when he strained his back lifting a heavy timber, her strong hands working the knots out of his muscles with practiced efficiency. The touches were practical, necessary, but Isaac found himself thinking about them at odd moments. The warmth of Zara's skin under his fingers, the surprising gentleness in her powerful hands, the way she watched him sometimes when she thought he was not looking. He knew he was falling for her, and the knowledge terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. 3 weeks after Zara had collapsed on his road, Isaac was working in his garden when he saw her emerge from the house carrying his fishing pole. "What are you doing?" he called. "I watch you fish 5 times now," Zara said, walking toward the small creek that ran along the edge of his property. "Every time you catch nothing, it is painful to watch." "I am not that bad," Isaac protested, following her. "You are terrible," Zara said bluntly. "You have no patience, you move too much, and you use wrong bait. I show you proper way." They spent the afternoon by the creek, Zara demonstrating fishing techniques with the confidence of someone who had fed herself from rivers and streams many times. Isaac watched, torn between focusing on her instruction and simply watching the way the dappled sunlight played across her features, the way her tusks flashed when she grinned at his mistakes. "There," Zara said suddenly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "See how line moves. Now you pull, firm but not too hard." Isaac pulled, and to his amazement, a fish broke the surface of the water, thrashing on his line. Zara laughed, a sound of pure delight, and helped him land the catch. It was a beautiful trout, silver and speckled, the first fish Isaac had caught from this creek despite months of trying. "I did it," he said, slightly stunned. "You did," Zara agreed, and her hand came to rest on his shoulder, easy and natural. "Good job, terrible fisherman." Isaac turned to respond and found himself very close to her, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. The laughter faded from both their faces, replaced by something more intense, more uncertain. "Zara," Isaac said softly, not sure what he was asking. "Isaac," she replied, and her hand slid from his shoulder down to his arm, her fingers encircling his wrist. I think I am in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" His heart was pounding now. "The kind where I care too much," Zara said, her voice rough. "The kind where I want to stay here with you and forget about clan and duty and all the reasons this is wrong." "Would it be so wrong?" Isaac asked, lifting his free hand to her face, carefully tracing the line of her jaw. "If you stayed, Yes, Zara said, but she leaned into his touch. And no, I do not know any more. You confuse me, Isaac Quinn. You make me want impossible things. What if they are not impossible? Isaac asked. What if we just decide that they are not and make it true? Zara closed her eyes, and now Isaac could see the conflict warring inside her. Everything she had been taught said this was wrong, that humans and orcs were enemies, that love between them was betrayal and perversion. But everything she had experienced with Isaac said the opposite, that connection and caring could exist across any divide if people were brave enough to reach for it. I am afraid, she admitted, so quietly he almost did not hear. I am warrior. I face death without fear, but this terrifies me. Me too, Isaac said, but I think it is the good kind of terrified, the kind that means something real is happening. Zara opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked, as if memorizing every detail of his face. Then, slowly, carefully, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. It was not a kiss, but something more intimate in its own way, a gesture of trust and affection that made Isaac's chest tight. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together, the caught fish forgotten on the bank beside them. When they finally pulled apart, something had shifted between them, some final wall crumbling. That night, after they had cleaned and cooked the fish, after they had eaten by lamplight and talked about nothing important, Zara did not go to the bedroom. Instead, she sat on Isaac's makeshift pallet on the floor and looked up at him. Sleep here tonight, she said. With me, just sleep, she clarified quickly. I do not want to be alone. Isaac's throat felt tight. Okay, he managed, just let me bank the fire. They lay down side by side on the pallet, which was really too small for both of them. Isaac ended up on his back with Zara curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, and her good arm draped across his chest. She was heavy and warm, and Isaac thought he might never be able to sleep with his heart pounding this hard. But then Zara sighed contentedly, her breath warm against his neck, and murmured, "This is nice." "Yes," Isaac agreed, his arm coming around to hold her carefully. "It is." He woke in the morning with Zara still in his arms, her face relaxed in sleep, and felt a surge of fierce protectiveness. Whatever challenges came, whatever obstacles they would face, he would find a way to keep her safe, to keep them together. The universe seemed determined to test that resolve sooner rather than later. It was late morning when Isaac heard horses approaching, multiple this time. He was in the barn with Zara, both of them working to repair some damaged feed bins. At the sound, they froze and looked at each other. "More visitors," Isaac said, his stomach sinking. "Stay here. Do not come out unless I call for you." Zara's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. "Be careful." He squeezed her hand once, then hurried out to greet whoever was coming. 3 riders approached, all men from the village that Isaac recognized. At their head was Richard, a burly man who served as something like the village constable. He did not look friendly. "Isaac Quinn," Richard called, reining in his horse. "We need to have a conversation with you." "About what?" Isaac kept his voice level, his body language casual. Inside, his mind was racing. "About orc sightings in the area," Richard said, dismounting. The other 2 men followed suit. "Margaret Orson says she saw an orc heading this direction the day she turned it away from town. We have been checking all the outlying farms, making sure no one has seen anything or been threatened." "I have not seen any orcs," Isaac said truthfully. Technically, Zara had collapsed on the road before reaching his farm. "My land has been quiet. Mind if we look around?" Richard asked, but it was not really a question, just to be thorough. Everything in Isaac wanted to refuse, but he knew that would only make them more suspicious. "Of course," he said, stepping aside. "Look wherever you need to." The 3 men spread out, checking his house, his garden, peering into his chicken coop. Isaac's heart hammered as Richard approached the barn. If they looked inside, if they found Zara, he did not know what he would do. Richard paused at the barn door, looking inside. Isaac held his breath. The barn was dim, full of shadows and equipment. Where was Zara? Had she hidden? Would they see her? Lots of junk in here, Richard commented. When is the last time you cleaned this place out? Been meaning to, Isaac said, moving to stand beside Richard at the door. He scanned the interior quickly and nearly sagged with relief. Zara was nowhere visible. Never seems to be enough hours in the day for everything. Ain't that the truth? Richard agreed, stepping back. Well, everything looks fine here, Isaac. Sorry to trouble you. No trouble, Isaac said, though his hands were shaking slightly. Better to be safe. The men mounted up and rode away, and Isaac waited until they were out of sight before rushing into the barn. Zara, he called softly. A pile of hay in the far corner shifted, and Zara emerged, covered in dust and chaff. She had somehow wedged herself into a small space between feed sacks and the wall, nearly invisible in the shadows. They are gone, Isaac said, offering her a hand up. You all right? I am fine, Zara said, brushing hay from her hair. Just dusty and angry. I hide like coward while men search for me like I am escaped criminal. You are not a coward, Isaac said firmly. You are being smart. If they had found you, they would have tried to drive you off or worse, and I would have had to fight them, and it would have been a disaster for everyone. I know, Zara said, but frustration radiated from her. But I hate it. I hate hiding, hate being hunted, hate that we cannot just exist in peace. Isaac pulled her into his arms, careful of her healing shoulder. She went stiff for a moment, then melted against him, her face buried in his shoulder. We will figure this out, he promised. I do not know how yet, but we will. But figuring it out proved more difficult than Isaac hoped. Over the next weeks, the village's paranoia increased. Riders came by Isaac's farm 3 more times, always checking, always suspicious. Margaret Orson started preaching about the orc menace in the village square every Sunday, whipping people into fear and anger. Zara grew more restless and frustrated with each passing day. She hated hiding, hated being confined to Isaac's farm, hated the feeling of being hunted. Isaac did what he could to make it bearable, but he could see the toll it was taking on her. Maybe you should leave, Isaac said one night, though the words felt like broken glass in his throat. Head west, away from here. Find somewhere safer. I do not want somewhere safer, Zara said fiercely. I want here. I want this farm and the chickens and the garden and you. I am done running, done being cast out, done accepting that I cannot have what I want because the world says it is wrong. Then what do we do? Isaac asked. We cannot keep hiding forever. Eventually someone will find out, and when they do. He did not finish the sentence. They both knew what would happen. Zara stood and began pacing, her movements agitated. In my clan, when there is dispute that cannot be resolved, warriors fight for the right to choose. Winner's decision stands, no argument. I am not going to fight the entire village, Isaac said. No, but maybe we do not have to. Zara stopped pacing and looked at him. What if we make them see? What if we show them that orc and human can live in peace, can help each other, can be together? How do we do that? Isaac asked. I do not know yet, Zara admitted, but I am tired of being invisible. Maybe it is time to be seen. The opportunity came sooner than expected. A massive storm rolled in 3 days later, the kind of late-season tempest that could destroy crops and damage buildings. Isaac and Zara worked frantically to secure his farm, bringing animals under shelter, tying down anything that might blow away, boarding up windows. The storm hit with terrifying force, wind howling and rain lashing. Isaac's small house creaked and groaned but held. They huddled inside, listening to the fury outside, hoping the barn would survive intact. When morning came and the storm passed, Isaac stepped outside to assess the damage. His farm had weathered it reasonably well, losing only some shingles and a section of fence. But as he looked toward the village, he saw smoke rising into the air. "Something is wrong," he said, and Zara appeared beside him, following his gaze. "Fire," she said. "Big one." They looked at each other. Isaac knew they should stay hidden, should avoid drawing attention. But if the village was in trouble, people would be hurt, buildings destroyed. He could not just sit by. "I have to help," he said. "We have to help," Zara corrected. "I come with you." "Zara, if they see you." "Then they see me," she said firmly. "You want me to hide while people suffer because I am afraid of what they think. That is not who I am. That is not who you are either." Isaac felt a surge of pride and terror in equal measure. "All right," he said. "Let us go." They hitched his horse to his small cart and loaded it with tools, blankets, and supplies. Then they set off down the muddy road toward the village. As they drew closer, Isaac could see that the storm had caused massive damage. Trees were down across the main road. Several buildings had lost roofs entirely. And at the center of the village, the meeting hall was on fire, probably struck by lightning. People were running everywhere, shouting, trying to organize bucket brigades from the well. Isaac pulled his cart up and jumped down, immediately moving to help. It took several moments before people noticed Zara. The first scream cut through the chaos. A woman saw Zara and shrieked, pointing. "Orc! There is an orc in the village!" Everything stopped. People turned, staring. Hands went to whatever weapons were available, tools and knives and clubs. Isaac stepped in front of Zara instinctively, his hands raised. "Wait," he called. "Please just wait. She is with me. She came to help." "Help?" Margaret Orson pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with hatred. "That creature came to kill us all while we are weak from the storm. Probably caused the fire itself with its savage magic." "Orcs do not have magic," Isaac said, trying to keep his voice calm. "And she has been living on my farm for weeks. If she wanted to hurt anyone, she would have hurt me, but she did not. She helped me. Fixed my fences, tended my animals, worked my garden. She is not your enemy. You have been harboring it." Richard stepped forward, his hand on the knife at his belt. "All this time you have been lying to us." "I have been protecting her," Isaac said. "And yes, I lied. Because I knew you would not understand. But she is not a monster. She is just a person trying to survive, same as all of us." "She is an orc," Margaret spat. "They are all monsters, all killers. They murdered my brother, or have you forgotten?" "I have not forgotten," Isaac said quietly. "But she did not kill your brother. She was not even there. She was cast out from her own clan for refusing to raid human settlements, for choosing peace over violence. She paid the price for her mercy, just like we are paying the price for our hatred right now." "Pretty words," Richard said. "But how do we know she is not just waiting for the right moment to betray us?" "Let me prove it," Zara said, her voice carrying over the crowd. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood tall despite the dozens of hostile eyes on her, despite the weapons pointed in her direction. "You have fire." "I am strong. I can help. I can move debris, carry water, work alongside you. And if I betray you, if I harm even one person, then kill me. I will not fight back." "No," Isaac said sharply. "We are not agreeing to that." "Yes, we are," Zara said, meeting his eyes. "Because they need to see. Words mean nothing. Only action means something." The crowd murmured among themselves. The meeting hall continued to burn, flames spreading to a nearby storage building. They were losing the fight, losing buildings, and they needed help. Finally, Richard made a decision. "Fine. But she works where we can see her, and the first sign of trouble, we end this." "Understood." "Understood," Zara said before Isaac could protest further. What followed was hours of backbreaking labor. Zara worked like a woman possessed, hauling buckets of water that would have taken 2 men to carry, moving fallen beams and debris that others struggled with, organizing bucket lines with military efficiency. Isaac worked beside her, but he kept glancing around, watching for any sign that someone might attack her when her back was turned. But something strange started happening. As people saw Zara working, saw her strength and determination, saw the way she helped pull a trapped child from a collapsed building without hesitation, attitudes began to shift. Not all at once, not everyone, but enough. A young man named Peter found himself working beside Zara on a bucket line. At first he was terrified, passing buckets with shaking hands. But as the hours wore on and Zara simply kept working, kept helping, he relaxed slightly. "Thank you," he said quietly during a brief rest, "for helping us. You did not have to." Zara looked at him in surprise. "You need help." "I can give help" is simple. "Not that simple," Peter said. "Not given what I have said about orcs, about your people. I am sorry for that." Zara studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I am sorry too. For things my people did, we all carry weight of our tribe's sins. Maybe together we learned to put down that weight." By the time the sun set, the fires were out. The immediate danger passed. The village was battered and bruised, but it would survive. People were exhausted, dirty, and injured. Isaac helped tend wounds with the supplies from his cart, while Zara continued working, helping to shore up damaged buildings and clear roads. Margaret Orson watched all of this with a face like thunder, but even she could not deny what Zara had done. When she tried to rouse anger against the orc, she found less support than before. People who had worked beside Zara, who had seen her risk herself to help them, were harder to turn to hatred. As darkness fell, Richard approached Isaac and Zara. He looked exhausted and conflicted. "You can go," he said to Zara. "You helped us today and I appreciate it, but I still do not trust this. An orc living among us, it goes against everything we have been taught." "I understand," Zara said. "Trust is earned, not given. I not ask you to trust me today. I only ask you to see me. To remember that I choose to help when I could have walked away." Richard grunted, which was not agreement but was not rejection either. "Just keep her on your farm, Isaac. Do not bring her to the village unless we are burning down again." It was not much, but it was something. Isaac and Zara loaded their cart and headed back to the farm in the darkness. They were both filthy and exhausted, but there was a sense of accomplishment too. They had taken a stand, had shown the village that coexistence was possible. Back at the farm, they washed up using cold water from the well and ate a simple meal of bread and cheese. Isaac kept catching Zara's eye across the table, and every time he did, she would smile slightly, a small private expression just for him. "You were amazing today," Isaac said finally. "Brave and strong and everything I have come to expect from you." "I was terrified," Zara admitted. "Every moment, I think maybe this is when they turn on me, when someone stabs me in the back. But I think of you, standing in front of me, defending me even though it put you in danger. And I think, if he can be that brave for me, I can be brave too." Isaac stood and moved around the table to her. He took her hands and pulled her to her feet. They stood close and Isaac lifted one hand to cup her face. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. Zara's eyes widened and for a moment she looked almost frightened. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes, please." Isaac leaned in carefully, giving her every chance to change her mind. But Zara did not pull away. Their lips met, tentative at first, testing this new territory. Zara's lips were warmer than Isaac expected, softer despite the small tusks that he had to angle around. She made a small sound in the back of her throat, and her hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, becoming less tentative, more urgent. Isaac's hand slid into her hair, feeling the silky strands between his fingers. Zara's arms wrapped around him, her strength tempered by surprising gentleness. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. That was. Zara started, then stopped, apparently unable to find words. Yeah, Isaac agreed. It was. They kissed again, and this time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. This was a claiming, a declaration, a promise that they were choosing each other despite every obstacle. When they finally stopped, it was only because they needed to breathe. Isaac, Zara said, her voice rough. I love you. I know it is fast, I know it is complicated, but I cannot deny it anymore. I love you. Joy flooded through Isaac, bright and overwhelming. I love you too, he said. I think I have been falling for you since the moment you collapsed on that road and looked at me with so much fear and pride mixed together. Zara laughed, the sound watery. That is foolish reason to fall in love. Maybe, Isaac said, pulling her close again, but I am not sorry. They stood together in the lamplight, holding each other, and Isaac felt like something enormous had shifted in the world. This was not going to be easy. There would be more challenges, more opposition, more times when they would have to fight for their right to simply be together. But they had taken the first steps, had shown that love could exist across any divide, and that was worth fighting for. The next weeks brought gradual change. Word spread about how Zara had helped during the storm, and while many in the village remained deeply suspicious, others began to soften. A few people even came to Isaac's farm specifically to see the orc woman who lived there, curious and cautious but willing to look past their prejudice. Peter, the young man who had thanked Zara during the fire, became an unlikely ally. He started visiting the farm regularly, at first just to talk, then to learn. He was fascinated by Zara's knowledge of animal husbandry and farming techniques, and she was patient in teaching him. Through him, other young people began to see that maybe everything they had been taught about orcs was not entirely true. Margaret Orson remained a vocal opponent, but her influence waned as more people began questioning the old hatreds. When she tried to organize a group to drive Zara away from the area, she found only a handful of supporters, and even they were half-hearted about it. Through it all, Isaac and Zara built their life together. They worked the farm side by side, expanding the garden and improving the barn. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. They learned each other's languages, Zara teaching Isaac words in her guttural native tongue while he helped her improve her English, and they loved each other with a fierceness that sometimes surprised them both. Isaac had thought he understood love before, but what he felt for Zara transcended anything he had experienced. She was his partner, his best friend, his home. Zara, who had been cast out and hunted and spat upon, found in Isaac something she had thought lost forever: belonging. 6 months after Zara had collapsed on the road, Isaac made a decision. He carved a ring from ash wood, simple but carefully made, and one evening as they sat watching the sunset from his porch, he took her hand. "Zara," he said, and his voice only trembled a little. "I want to ask you something important." Zara looked at him, her amber eyes soft in the fading light. "What is it?" "Marry me," Isaac said. "I know it is not legal, that no priest or official would recognize it, but I do not care about legal. I care about you and me and the life we are building." "Will you marry me?" Zara stared at him, and for a terrible moment Isaac thought she would refuse. Then her face crumpled and tears began streaming down her cheeks. In all the months he had known her, Isaac had never seen her cry, not when she was injured, not when she was frightened, not even when she talked about losing her family. But now she wept openly, her shoulders shaking. "Yes," she managed through her tears. "Yes, I marry you, you foolish, wonderful human. I marry you and stay with you and love you until I die." Isaac slipped the wooden ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her specifically. Then he kissed her, tasting salt from her tears, and felt his own eyes burning with emotion. They married themselves in the old way, with oaths spoken under the open sky. Zara taught Isaac the traditional orc marriage vows, and he taught her the human ones. They combined them into something new, something that belonged only to them. They had no witnesses except the chickens and the setting sun and the wind in the trees, but it felt more real and binding than any ceremony in a church. That night, they made love for the first time, learning each other with tenderness and passion and occasional laughter when something did not work quite as planned. Zara was strong and fierce but also surprisingly gentle, and Isaac did his best to show her with his body what his words could never fully express: that she was precious, that she was loved, that she was home. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Isaac's bed, which had become their bed now. Zara traced patterns on Isaac's chest with one finger, her expression thoughtful. "You regret it?" she asked quietly. "Giving up normal life, accepting orc wife who brings you trouble?" "Never," Isaac said firmly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Every challenge is worth it to have you in my life." "Even when villagers come with torches?" Zara asked, but there was a teasing note in her voice. "Even then," Isaac said, though he hoped it would never come to that. "You and me against the world if necessary." "You and me," Zara repeated, snuggling closer. "I like sound of that." As the seasons turned, their unconventional household became more accepted, though never fully embraced. People who had initially been hostile began to thaw, especially as they saw how Isaac and Zara helped the community. When harvest came, Zara's strength made quick work of heavy labor, and she would assist neighbors without expecting payment. When winter storms threatened, their farm became a refuge for anyone who needed it, human or otherwise. A year after Zara arrived, a small group of young orcs appeared at Isaac's farm, lean and desperate. They were outcasts like Zara, individuals who had chosen different paths and been punished for it. Isaac and Zara took them in, gave them food and shelter, helped them find land of their own nearby. Slowly, a small community began forming around Isaac's farm, a place where orcs and humans who wanted to live differently could find acceptance. 2 years after Zara arrived, Isaac's farm had expanded significantly with help from their growing community. They now raised not just chickens but goats and cattle as well, plus extensive gardens that fed dozens of people. The nearby village, seeing the prosperity this cooperation brought, began trading more freely with the orc families. Prejudice did not disappear, but it retreated, replaced by cautious coexistence and occasionally even friendship. Margaret Orson never did accept the new reality. She moved away eventually, taking her hatred with her to a different village farther from the frontier. Isaac could not find it in himself to be sorry. Some people were too wounded by the past to see a different future, and he had learned to accept that. 3 years after Zara arrived, she told Isaac she was pregnant. The news terrified and thrilled them both. Half-orc children were rare, and they had no idea what to expect. But when their daughter was born, tiny and perfect with her mother's green skin and her father's brown eyes, they fell in love all over again. They named her Hope, because that was what she represented. Hope that the world could change, that ancient hatreds could be overcome, that love could bridge any divide. She grew up running wild through their farm, learning to speak both languages fluently, comfortable in both worlds in a way her parents had never been. 5 years after Zara arrived, Peter, the young man who had thanked her after the fire, married an orc woman himself. The wedding was held at Isaac and Zara's farm, attended by both humans and orcs, and celebrated with food and music and joy. Margaret would have been horrified, but everyone else saw it for what it was: progress, healing, the future slowly replacing the past. Isaac and Zara grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They faced challenges, certainly. There were still people who hated what they represented, still attacks from both human raiders and orc clans who saw them as traitors. But they also found allies, found community, found proof that their choice to love each other had made the world a little bit better. On the 10th anniversary of the day Zara had collapsed on the road, they stood together at the edge of their property, watching the sun set. Their farm had become a homestead now, with multiple buildings and families living in harmony. Their daughter Hope played with other children, half orcs and humans and full-blood orcs, all learning to see each other as people first. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Zara asked, leaning into Isaac's side. "When you were stitching my shoulder." "I said a lot of things," Isaac replied, his arm around her waist. "I was trying to distract you from the pain." "You said you were done with violence and hatred," Zara said. "That if you could do one small thing to counter all the death you had seen, you would do it. You thought stitching wound of injured orc was small thing." "It was small," Isaac said, "just trying to help one person." "But look what came from it," Zara said, gesturing to the homestead around them, the community they had built, the children playing without fear. "From one small act of kindness all of this grew. You saved more than my life that day, Isaac. You saved my hope, my future, my heart. You showed me that different world was possible." Isaac pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "We built this together. Your courage, your strength, your willingness to trust me despite everything you had been taught. I could not have done any of it without you. We make good team," Zara said, smiling up at him. "Farmer and warrior, human and orc. We make something new, something better." "We do," Isaac agreed. "And we are going to keep building it, for Hope and all the children who come after. We are going to show the world that love is stronger than hate, that bridges can be built across any divide." "Pretty words," Zara teased, echoing what Richard had said all those years ago. "But I believe them." "Because you make me believe." They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. Around them, their community continued its evening routines, people of different races and backgrounds living and working together. It was not perfect, would never be perfect, but it was good and getting better all the time. Isaac thought back to the soldier he had been, the young man who had seen so much death and destruction. That man would never have believed this future was possible. But the farmer he had become, the man who had chosen to help an injured orc woman on a muddy road, knew that even the smallest acts of kindness could change the world. "I love you," he said to Zara, the words as true and necessary as breathing. "Today, tomorrow, always." "I love you too," Zara replied, turning to kiss him properly. "My husband, my heart, my home. Thank you for seeing me when the world wanted me invisible. Thank you for stitching my wound with your own hands and healing more than just flesh. Thank you for trusting me," Isaac said. "For staying, for building this life with me. You made me believe in something better." They kissed again as the stars began emerging in the darkening sky, two people who had chosen love over fear, hope over hatred, and in doing so had created something beautiful and enduring. Their story had started with blood and pain and desperation, but it had become something magnificent, a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of love, and the unshakable truth that we are all, at our core, simply people trying to find our way home. And they had found it together, in a small farm on the frontier, where an orc woman and a human man proved that the impossible was only impossible, until someone was brave enough to make it real. Their love had started with a single act of kindness, a farmer seeing past prejudice to help someone in need. And from that tiny seed had grown a forest of hope that would shelter generations to come. As they walked back toward their house, hand in hand, Isaac knew that every choice that had led him to that muddy road had been worth it. Every battle fought, every friend lost, every moment of loneliness and doubt, it had all led him to Zara. And he would walk that path again 1,000 times if it meant ending up right here, with her beside him and their future spreading out bright and boundless before them. The town healer had spat at the orc, turning away someone desperate and injured. But the farmer had seen past the surface to the person beneath, and with his own hands had stitched not just a wound, but the beginning of a bond that would change everything. In the end, love had won, as it always did when given a chance, and two people who should have been enemies had become the foundation of something better, something worth believing in. Their story was not the end but the beginning, the first chapter in a longer tale of healing and hope that would ripple outward through the years. And though challenges would come, though there would be setbacks and struggles, Isaac and Zara would face them together, united in their love and their certainty that they had chosen the better path. They had found each other against all odds, had built a life and a family and a community that proved the old hatreds did not have to win. And on quiet evenings, when the work was done and the children were asleep, they would sit together and remember that first day, when everything changed because one man chose kindness over fear, and one woman chose to trust despite every reason not to. That was the magic that had built their world, simple and profound. The choice to see each other as people first, to offer help to those who needed it, to believe that love could exist anywhere if people were brave enough to reach for it. That was their legacy, their gift to the future, their proof that even in a world full of darkness, light could still find a way through. And it all started with a wounded orc woman on a road and a farmer who refused to look away, who stitched her wound with his own hands, and in doing so, stitched together two souls that had been wandering lost and alone. Together, they had found home, found purpose, found everything that mattered. And they lived, truly and completely lived, happily ever after in the life they had built with their own hands and hearts.